Hi, Pastor Nathan Ed with your hashtag Better Together devotion for today. Make sure to share, subscribe, click all those buttons below so that we can share the good news together of Jesus Christ. So today I want to focus on Romans chapter 10, verse 9, in a place where Paul encourages the congregation at Rome to call upon Jesus as Lord. In fact, he says it almost as if this is probably something that they were very familiar with. It wasn't new to them. He does the same thing in the letter to Corinthians. There's hints of it in other places as well in the early church. This is an important phrase. Jesus is Lord. In fact, when I got ordained, one of the questions that I had to answer before I could get ordained was, what is meant by Jesus is Lord? I had to write a little paragraph about that to unpack it, to understand what it meant for the church. And so let's talk about this phrase, Jesus is Lord. The early church probably used it as a baptismal confession or profession of faith. That is, that when someone was converting to Christianity, whether it be someone who was Jewish, who was now becoming a Jewish Christian, or whether it was a Gentile from a variety of all of the Greco-Roman world's belief systems, was converting over to Christianity from all of the pagan belief systems, that they were declaring Jesus is Lord. This was important to them. This was a moment for them, and then they were baptized and brought into the faith. We say that Jesus is Lord, and we're thinking in a theological concept, and when I say that, we're thinking about theos, we're thinking about God. We're calling Jesus God. We're equivocating Jesus is God. That's what we say when we mean Jesus is Lord in our context today. But perhaps we should also hear it in the context of the ancient world, in the early church as well. Because to say Jesus is Lord in the early church, to say Jesus is Lord in the early context of our faith, was to say that someone else was not Lord, and that was to say that Caesar is not Lord. This was a political statement. This was a statement about the understanding of kingdom rule, the understanding of who decides things for me in my life. That this was a decision of kind of breaking away from the world that we live in into a new understanding, a new concept of what it meant to be alive in this world. To say Jesus is Lord and not the government, not any political leader, not any charismatic leader, to say that Jesus is Lord, it's to hand over our heart to Christ and to submit. Now, that's a hard concept for us, especially in the American context, because the idea of submission seems weak to us in our context. We don't like the idea of submission. We don't like the idea of submitting to a ruler. But when we say Jesus is Lord, that is exactly what Christ is calling us to do. That's exactly what Paul is telling the community at Rome to do and the community at Corinth to do. We are called to submit our will to Christ, to submit our lifestyle to Christ, to submit who we are to Christ, and to live in such a way that we are distinctly different than Caesar, than Rome, than the world. It changes who we are. It changes what it means to be here on this earth. So I encourage you today in your prayer life to pause and to take time to submit. Where are the places in your life that you haven't knelt down, where you haven't said, Jesus, you're my Lord? And in that prayer, submit. Offer yourself, your heart, your will, all that you are, and submit to Christ. And when you do, you'll find we're all better together.